final Pac-12 championship game that we're ever going to watch. And Sam, I don't know about you, but I'm holding back tears right now. I really can't believe the Pac-12 is about to be over. This is the last game of Pac-12 football that we are about to see, Sam.
It's different.
It hurts because this conference has been so damn good this season. Like, I don't know what it is about Pac-12 after dark, but it just always has me glued to my television after 10:30 p.m. And you look at these two teams. Not just is this the final Pac-12 championship game ever, but the winner of this game gets a spot in the college football playoffs. That's just such a great way to go out. You're going to have one of these teams playing in the college football playoffs, and both of these two teams are good enough to win it all this year. But what surprises me, and I don't know if it surprises you, Oregon is a 9.5-point favorite, Sam. And it really confuses me because people make it seem like Washington is overrated. They're undefeated for a reason. Of course, they don't have the same level of dominance in their wins that Oregon has, and they pretty much played the same amount of teams. Utah got dominated by Oregon. Washington didn't really dominate USC, but Oregon didn't dominate them neither. And Washington had a really impressive defensive performance, not just against Washington, but against Oregon State as well. And while you can say that Oregon has played their best football ever since they lost to Washington, you know, you look back at that game and a lot of people make excuses for Oregon losing that game, saying that the play calling was a little bit questionable in their fourth down situations. They went for it on fourth down a good amount of times. They went for it before halftime instead of opting to get the field goal. And Dan Lanning was really aggressive. And a lot of people believe that Dan Lanning has learned from his mistakes, and I agree with that. But I'm tired of people making it seem like Washington doesn't have Michael Penix, who along with Bo Nix is most likely going to be a Heisman finalist, like they don't have one of the best receiving corps in college football. Anything that Oregon has, Washington has, minus the defense. And Washington's defense isn't bad. I mean, their defense was good enough to stop Oregon in several fourth down situations the last time they played. And I know in games like this, very rarely do you see teams beat the same opponent within the season twice. But Oregon, I definitely think there's a good chance they lose this game. And for Washington, with the fact that they start out slow at times and Michael Penix can look a little bit streaky, that probably is a reason why a lot of people are picking Oregon to win. But I don't know, like, I really feel like Washington is being severely overlooked and underestimated. Even if they lose, I don't think Oregon's going to walk in and bully them and just obliterate them. Washington is a damn good team, but am I tripping?
Yeah. No, because Washington has a schematic advantage over Oregon. Oregon's the much better team. That's why they're favored. But Oregon likes to run the ball, and they will run the ball. Washington can pass the entire game and be good at it. And Oregon's weakness defensively is their secondary because they're not healthy there, and they haven't. They lost, what was his name? Christian Gonzalez
to the
NFL. Last year.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. And they're all transfers. So Oregon's strength is pass rush, run stop. What Lanning has built at Oregon is basically last year's Georgia team. That's what I love about them. They literally look like last year's Georgia, where they're killer efficient offensively. They have an even better quarterback, better wide receiver core. Obviously, they don't have Brock Bowers or Darnell Washington. Elite O-line, better running back room. They're like last year's Georgia, but with the Walmart version of that defense, with probably a better pass rush, but a better offense. I have them in a special tier, really. It's them and Michigan I have in my own rankings as like the two best teams in the country. Washington will be able to use their receivers to target Oregon's secondary, and Oregon with Lanning will want to run the football even if it sometimes works to their detriment, because Washington's weakness on defense is also defending the pass. They have a worse pass defense than even Oregon does. But matchups are a lot in college football, but they don't always determine game outcomes. An example of this is Georgia, Ohio State last season, which we were just talking about. Ohio State had a schematic advantage and they had a perimeter play advantage. The problem is Georgia was the mentally and physically tougher team, and they were better coached all season long and on the defensive side of the ball. So they won. While Washington, I think, is better coached than Oregon, they have a more experienced head coach, better staff. Oregon is that much more talent, and it's hard to beat a great team twice unless you have some kind of unless you have some kind of outright advantage or you're straight up the better team. It's hard to be the worst team and beat the superior team twice. So I think Oregon wins, but I think it's close. I'd be inclined to pick like 34-27 or probably 35-28 Oregon or something.
Man, I'm probably going to regret this, but I'm taking Washington, bro. I think a lot of people are really sleeping on Washington. Like, Washington has one of the best offensive lines in college football. And the fact that they just choose to throw the football when they have a really good running back and they're good enough to run it if they want to as well. This is a well-balanced team. It's just that they just choose to air the football a lot because when you got 3 NFL caliber wide receivers, a first-round caliber quarterback, and Michael Penix, fuck it, why not just air the football out? But what kind of concerns me about Washington is that they start out really slow in a lot of their games, or they'll get out to a fast start and then they'll kind of go a little bit cold. And Michael Penix, he normally starts games out pretty cold. And then he starts to heat up as the game moves along. But I don't think we're going to see that same kind of performance out of him in this Washington offense in this game against Oregon. I think they're going to come out guns blazing. And the last time these two teams played, Oregon couldn't stop these wide receivers for jack squat. And I don't really see that changing. Their secondary is not good enough to contain this passing attack. Oregon State was able to slow Washington down, but I think that was more due to the weather conditions and them playing on the road. Washington State did the same thing, and that was a rivalry game. But I just think styles make fights. And I really think that Washington has Oregon's number. Oregon has Bo Nix, and of course, you could say that they outplayed Washington in their previous matchup. They were better in third down situations. They were more efficient. But where Washington had Oregon beat was in the crucial late game decisions. Oregon went 0-3 in fourth down situations. Meanwhile, Washington, in their last game, when they were put in fourth down situations, they came through 2 times out of 3. And I really believe that this Washington team is being heavily overlooked. And I think that they're just as good as what Oregon is. I don't really think that any team really has the talent advantage, in my opinion, because if you were to go position by position, they're pretty much evenly matched outside of the defensive line and their linebackers. That's about it. I don't think either one of these teams has tremendous secondary play, and we're probably not going to see great secondary play out of either one with how good the quarterback play is and how good these receivers are for both teams. But I like Washington to win again. I'm going to take them to win 42-38. That's my final score prediction. A game like this really comes down to who's going to have the ball last. And if Washington gets the ball last, like how they did last time, I like them to win.
Yeah, that's understandable because last season, Oregon was also the better team in terms of talent, at least at the time they met up, and Washington won. I think there's something to that coaching advantage for the Huskies. I just think Dan Lanning's a good coach. Although, Ryan Day lost to his rival 3 times in a row, and I still think he's an elite head coach. So Dan Lanning can do the same, in my opinion, if him won't change.